Let's get the ball rolling. First of all, thank you
Yeah.
for everyone for being here and tuning in to our webinar. I have a very special guest today. I'm going to introduce him in a second, but I think just to frame where we want to be today. So most software we use today was designed around simple assumptions, right? Humans do the work, software helps them, right? Makes their job easier, maybe reduce some challenges in the flow itself. But effectively, what we're seeing every day now, and from day to day, it's getting even crazier. That assumption is effectively starting to break, right? We're entering a world where software doesn't just assist; it actually does the work, right? And that changes everything, how products are built, how they bought, how they priced, and what good software even means from that perspective. So internally, as we've been building Autonomy AI and Face Studio, we've been seeing this firsthand, right? What we see is we see product managers, we see designers, we see product teams as a whole going from just writing specs to actually delivering and shipping products to code. And overall, the main topic of what everyone is talking about is like, oh my God, what's going to happen right now, right? Like, is SaaS, is software as a service, is going to like basically be gone, be dead, and no one is going to utilize it anymore. It changes a lot of companies, it changes a lot of business models, as I mentioned. And what we want to do today is we kind of want to unpack it. We kind of want to organize everything and maybe, I don't know, settle some people down from their perspective and put everything into perspective. And I'm very happy that we have today Collin Smith, who's joining us. He's a friend. We know each other what for 5 6 years, I don't know. Um, and then Collin is founder of Wheat Street, sold this company to Consensus. Now he's leading product for Consensus. Collin, thank you for being and then taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Adir, we do go back. We have some fun stories from a couple years ago that we'll save for another day, but it's good to see you, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's start in a simple way, right? Like when people are talking about no longer SaaS, but like agentic SaaS, what do you think that they're getting wrong, or where do you think they're missing things now?
Well, I mean, if you go to LinkedIn, I mean, it's what's interesting about AI is it's the first time in my career that I've seen my friends and my family that are nowhere near software folks, they're healthcare providers, they're lawyers coming into our world a little bit. I got a text yesterday from one of my best friends who is an attorney down in Alabama who said that goodness gracious, there's AI freaking everywhere, man. I'm sick of hearing about AI. This is what he's texting me. He's like, doomsday. Everyone's doomsday in my industry. People think AI is gonna take over and all this stuff. Well, there's a few things, right? So so I think there's two things that we're getting wrong. Number one, that AI is going to cripple the human economy, right? And the knowledge work economy. We've studied this before. This has been studied. And if it's anything like the age of the internet, where we were empowered as a human species with like this democratization of information, it actually raised the median, right? So yes, there were some folks who their jobs were no longer relevant, but they became actually higher paid folks in different roles that were more strategic. I believe that same course of action will play through because, as a lot of people say, well, if there's no humans doing work, then there's no humans to pay the AI, right? Like
Yeah.
we have to have an economy here. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this notion that SaaS is dead, which I know is kind of the theme of this conversation, and that software companies are no longer going to exist because everyone's going to make their own software. Like, I think as humans, we have a short memory. We tried this. We tried this, everyone, if everyone's wondering, right? Like, software companies didn't accidentally show up in these billion-dollar valuations. What happened was we tried to build our own software, our own CRMs, our own workflow automations, our own, document management systems. And what we realized was, oh gosh, yeah, maybe we can do it, but should we? Because we sell pet supplies. We sell vitamins. Like, this is not our core business. So let's let someone else do that for us. I think that's wrong. I think it's incorrect. I don't think that SaaS is dead. I do not think SaaS is dead. I think it's going to change and look very different though.
That's great, but I mean, let me double click on this, right? Still, there's a lot of noise, right? And people are talking about like it's the evolution is like AI now. It's everyone is talking about agents, right? So when I'm a company and I'm looking to buy a different SaaS products, right? And then before I even like talking about the marketing side of how you market SaaS products as a whole, I hear about agents, I think about automations, right? Like, but it's not just automation, right? Like I think what people are missing is like there's a deeper something deeper that you need to build end to end. And I also want to talk about the positive aspect of this. Have you seen places that like you're saying, well, it doesn't make any sense for me to go ahead and buy something I can automate this entire process from an agentic perspective?
Can you rephrase the question? What specifically are you asking?
Yes. So I think from that perspective, it's like you have agents, people talk about
Yeah.
agents, they think about automating processes, right? So for them it's like very lucrative. I don't need to buy a CRM for that matter because I can
Yeah.
automate the entire workflow for me. But it's not just that, right? Like you need to build a whole orchestration
Yeah.
around it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the what do they say? It's like the iceberg fallacy, right? Like you think with the iceberg, you can only see 10% of an iceberg above the water. You don't see the 90%. So people think that's how big it is, but it's actually much larger. I think that's a metaphor for building your own software. Like every one of us who has built software knows shipping the product is 10% of the effort, right? Building the initial version of the product is probably 10% of the effort. I would say there's another 90% underwater,
Yeah.
which are when bugs come up, feature requests, because you always think, we've all been here, right? We think, especially our product leaders on the call, we think that we nailed it this time. Like this time we finally covered everything that customers gonna want. And then it's about 30 minutes into your first customer discovery call or user call. And they're like, yeah, but wouldn't it be I love it, but I'd like for it to do this also. Can we do that also? And that's what happens with your internal users. They're your customers now. So you ship a first version of a product, you think you nailed it, and then you have actually 9 times the amount of effort coming down for the rest of your life on maintaining it, bug fixes, feature requests, blah, 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 blah. And I want to emphasize this because I think it's super important. And hopefully one day in a couple years, someone will say, I watched your webinar and this actually impacted me. Every minute that you spend working on internal software for your business operations is a minute that you are not spending on your core business. And I assure you, you have a competitor who is spending that minute on their core business. And enough of those minutes added up, and you just lost your seat, bro. You just got eclipsed because you've been
Yeah.
focused on internal operations.
I think it's a great point, right? It's like it seems very sexy, it seems very lucrative. I can do this on my own, but like at the end of the day, you have limited resources, right? And with those limited resources, it generates like, okay, I'm not working on a feature that can be impactful for my business. I'm not working on a feature against competition.
Yeah.
But like you've built products, you are building a product, you're in charge, like on the consensus product today, right? And leading it. Um, but there is no doubt that software, right, is changing because software is actually doing the work right now, or the majority of the work. What happens effectively to the interface, right? Like, do we move toward like a no UI world, or UI is becoming something completely different? How do you tackle this challenge on your end?
When we first agreed to do this webinar, it's also that this what I'm about to cite happened in between the two. So we agreed to do this webinar together. You and I were having, coffee talking about this whole new world, and then we're like, we should do something, maybe a month and a half later, we actually got on the books, and here we are. In between that time period, we talked about or I had this theory of a headless UI. And I'm not
Mhm.
claiming I'm at Oracle. I get things wrong daily. My girlfriend will tell you that. What I did get right though is that more and more of the user interface is going to move to headless, which for those on the call don't know what headless is, it's effectively not a web application, right? You're basically hitting the API calls. You're doing the work via Slack, via Telegram, via email commands. You're doing it in what via, a Chrome extension in ways that are not inside the web app. And
Cool.
Salesforce.com, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, just released this. new kind of paradigm. It's not a feature. It's like an operating system, and it's called, I think, Salesforce Headless UI or 360
Yeah.
UI. And basically, like Mark Benioff, and I'm sure he was made aware of this by his amazing team, but said, work is moving from the web application, from the four squares of your web app to all the places that people are throughout their day on their phones, right? Like all over. That's what I believe. You asked about interface. That's my long-winded response. I think there people probably still have web apps, for folks to go to. But ultimately, it's kind of like banks, right? They still have like banks branches, but like most people just handle everything online, and that online, distribution is all the places that your ICP, your ideal customer profile lives, and that's where they're going to have to do the work. So I think interfaces become significantly less of a priority for product teams to build, um, and they're going to switch a lot of their energy towards how can folks get value from my product in other places.
Let's unpack it for a second, because I think the reason it's happening is because users now are starting to expect, they don't care how the sausage is being made, right? So if you're working on a software product, like you up to date, you're like trying to understand how the sausage is being made to get a result. Now the user expectation is for you to just get the sausage, right? Just get the end result. And that's why
Yeah.
this interface is changing, right? That's why Salesforce basically changed their entire concept of how they're thinking. You need to ask a request, we will do the entire work behind the scenes. So, yes, UI is maybe kind of taking a back seat in some aspect, but it also puts on the front like aspect the user experience as a whole, right? Like, because
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's not just UI, but user experience is taking a front seat, and it's taking a place, I think, a more important place in this entire flow. So how
Oh
do you
yeah.
view a great UX in this age of like, I don't care how the sausage is being made, just give me the end result.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Like I want to make that clear. UI and UX can sometimes be used interchangeably, but they are absolutely different things. UI is the pixels on the screen. It's the interface. It's the GUI, right? The graphical user interface. Pixel screen, right? UX
Mhm.
is the human element of software. I mean, there's UX in coffee makers, right? Like it's the experience of doing the job to be done. So your question, it's a big one, is how should we as product leaders think about user experience going forward with this non-UI, maybe first, non-UI first kind of culture? And I think it comes down to fundamentals, man. Like your product fundamentals. What is the problem you are solving and for who? And once you get really clear, and I mean I'm a former founder. So I feel, and you are a founder, I feel like founders get so connected with the problem they're solving because they have to. If you're going to be
Yeah.
successful, you have to. You live it, you feel it, you know it, you know the edges, you know where it stops, you know where it starts. It's like you get to know it in this really intimate way. And I think that's what product leaders are going to need. They're going to need to really understand the problem that they're solving at a deep level and for who. And then the next step is, where are those people when they're experiencing that problem? Where are they? What are they doing? What are they feeling? And then you'll start to emerge these kind of like decentralized places where you need to be. If you're the solution, which you claim to be, this
Yeah.
as a product leader, you claim to be the solution, you need to be there. Um, but I think it comes back to fundamentals. I think there's a lot of product leaders in this world that have become successful, gotten promoted, become, great PMs without understanding the product because they could just always lead back on like, oh, we're just going to add this new feature here that someone told me about, but they didn't have to critically think that much because they were just playing in one sandbox that they happen to own. This is a whole new
Yeah.
world.
It is, and I think like the users are changing, the expectations of users are changing, right? They're expecting things faster, they're expecting things to be more direct. And I totally agree with you. You need to think about the problem you solve, but you also need to think about where your user is going to consume it and how they're going to consume it from that perspective, right? So
Yeah.
that's a critical part. And I think overall with AI, what we see is like sometimes the end result, or you have an ask and the result you're getting is not sometimes fitted from your perspective. So how you can like basically explain to the user, hey, I need more context, right? I need you to be more aware, I need you to ask me more questions, so I can give you the right answer, right? So from my perspective, the way I see the user experience is changing to a place that is more conversational, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm making a conversation with another human being. I'm expecting to make a conversation with agents. And I think, by the way, as buyers are getting younger and younger and they're
Oh yeah.
entering the workforce, we'll see it more and more, right? I crazy stat from a less than a year ago, Google released their quarterly reports. Their number one growing segment is actually voice activation,
Oh,
but
I
it's
believe it.
growing in the ages of 14 to 18. And obviously, those people are like, they're conversing with like a Google HomePods or whatever they call them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm an Apple guy, so but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a key thing.
I believe it because well, I had the opportunity to sit down with Maddie, the CEO founder of 11 Labs, a few weeks ago. He's here in DC. We got dinner with some folks, and he was showing us some of the use cases that you would never freaking think of. Like you think of 11 Labs, you maybe think of like, the very high tech use cases. No, like DMVs across the country. And it's brilliant. I don't need to plug them, but I just thought I totally believe that stat. Folks are trying to do it wherever they are. And the voice is just easier.
Yeah. Um, so one of the things we talked about when we chatted about this webinar, right, is enterprise sales in general, right? Like you guys, Consensus, are working heavily with enterprise companies. We have quite a few enterprise organizations that are onboarding the problem, and traditionally, the way enterprise companies, enterprise software is being bought is like through like a checklist of features, right? RFP, you get an RFP. You need to go through the features, and hopefully you have everything there to get to the next stage, right?
Yeah.
But like this model, is it even relevant today? Like what breaks in this model?
So just wanted to reset my camera there for a second.
Okay.
Um, I you know, I think we've been really blessed and lucky as a software community to be able to drive revenue and land deals by promises and saying, these features, these are the features we have. And, you know, I was recently on having a conversation with a buddy who owns a commercial HVAC company. I told this story recently because I think it really hit me like a ton of bricks that like what software is going into is what the rest of the world's used to. And he basically was saying that when they go build a hotel or hospital or an apartment complex and they do all the duct work and they install the unit and they run the duct work and they have all the controls for the building, they don't get paid their at least the majority of their amount until they do what's called a commissioning process. And the commissioning process is they have a third party vendor owned by the or hired by the owner tenant comes through, turns on everything, and runs it through basically all of these outcomes based configurations to make sure it does what it says it's going to do. If you say you're going to be able to control the airflow at this rate, it's going to do that. And then they get paid. We in software have been able to be like, nah, I don't do it. Don't worry about it. All right, payment, thanks. See you.
Yeah.
And then never
Yeah.
does it. And we built so many bad taste in people's mouth that they go to commission, they do the commissioning and it doesn't do it. And enablement's also a problem. So maybe it does do it, but people don't do it the right way. I think
We
we're
always blame the users, right? It's always the user problem,
yeah,
right?
right. I think that we're moving into an extremely high accountability world in software that our friends out in the physical world have been used to for a long time. And there's no more questions around feature functionality. I think people are going to show up. I'm guessing, I don't know this. I think people are going to show up and they're going to say, hey, I'd like to see an example of where you have reduced time to patient first contact at a hospital in the United States. I'm a US hospital with 200 bed count, and I'm looking to solve this problem. I want to see where you've driven that outcome. I think people are going to swap out feature-based RFPs. Do you have the login? Do you have the analytics? Do your analytics filter by user? I think that shit's gone. Pardon my
Yeah,
French. I think it's gone, and I think people are going to show up with just one question. Show me a time, and I want to speak to the customer that you've achieved this outcome for them. Because
yeah.
that's the way the rest of the world works, by the way. That's the way the
Yeah,
rest of the world, outside of software, that's the way my dad owns a small business. He doesn't get to just sell without proving. He has to show examples of where he did the outcome, and then he can sign the contract, or then he can
yeah.
get.
So it effectively means that like we're moving from I think a feature-based kind of RFPs to prove the outcome RFPs, right? Like
Yeah.
that's exactly
That's
the
my
point that you
that's my
mentioned.
hypothesis.
I completely agree. I mean, we're starting to see this, right? We're starting to see this in both ways. In one way is like the RFPs we're starting to get, the conversation we're starting to have, but we also start seeing this from pricing perspective, right? And that fundamentally changes the way buyers are doing. So, recent survey that I've looked at had over 70% of the companies are moving away to more usage-based pricing, which effectively
Yeah.
means outcome pricing. But
Right.
like, what happens if like you sign the agreement, you start working, and you can't get the job done, right? Like, what happens between like to the vendor itself, how it's creating an impact, right?
Yeah, I think it's tough. Like I think the world of BS software is going to, I think we're going to see a lot of folks go to the graveyard. Honestly, I think there's going to be a lot of folks that aren't able to cut it because they've been able to kind of hide behind a lower budget item. Maybe they have a couple super users, but 90% of the folks don't. Like, I think that's a big risk for us as leaders in the software space that like the level of accountability for our products are going to increase substantially, and we better nail the functionality, the capabilities, nail the user experience, not the user interface, user experience. And that's the only way that we're going to survive. If your product kind of works some of the time, that's
You
rough.
know, like talking about it, I first of all, I want to give also another nugget here. I talked with a few companies that are doing like CPQ billing for usage-based organizations, and they mentioned that like I think it was like a crazy number, 40 to 50% of the time they're asking for refunds, right? Like companies are asking for refunds through them, so it increased dramatically. Stripe, less than a year ago, moved away from their like refund policy and make it a little bit more harsher because they
Yeah.
couldn't handle the demand. So we see this impact. But you as a PM, right? You as someone who's leading a product, how firm or what's the position you want to take as a product leader to make sure your product actually does what it advertised, right? Because you know if it doesn't go all the way, people won't buy, people will ask for a refund, you won't win RFPs. So how do you see yourself, your new role inside the organization as someone who's leading product and I think the collaboration with R&D, the collaboration with the technical authorities in the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think my default thought is always take the Chick-fil-A route of customer experience, which is the customer is literally always right. And Chick-fil-A has that mentality, right? You could eat the whole sandwich and say you don't like it and want a refund, and they will literally give you a refund. They'll be like, I'm so sorry that you didn't like it. What'd you not like about it? Right? And they'll give you a refund. And they win because that they win hearts and minds from people. It's cultural, it's deep.
Yeah.
I think that's like my gut feel is like you do that because there is value in the person that eats the full, chicken sandwich and saying they didn't like it. There's value in saying like, what did you not like about it? You ate the whole chicken sandwich. Oh, it was the French fries. Oh, so actually you just want a refund for the French fries. Oh, maybe we should unbundle the chicken sandwich and the French fries so people can, you know what I mean? Like, there's value. I'm just running through a random thing, metaphorically. Like, that's a crazy stat. That you said 80. What did you say it again?
Like 40 to 50% increase in refunds requests.
Oh my
So
gosh,
it's
yeah.
crazy.
But on the same token, right? Like, if you are pricing properly and you're packaging properly, and maybe you have a little freemium period, or maybe you have like my personal preference is more of the click up mentality where they give you everything and then they slowly start to take features away, like feature degradation. You know, I think that maybe you can protect against that. I don't know. I'm not a growth hack expert, but it's going to be a very interesting challenge for our growth friends to figure out.
Can we agree that pricing and packaging as a whole is moving away from seats, right? I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
fact that
yeah.
we
Oh
we
yeah.
see it, right?
You can't.
We
I mean, when the whole value proposition of software has moved from making it easier for humans to do things to no, we'll just do it for you. That's the
get the
AI.
result.
Yeah, end
Exactly.
result, we'll just do it for you. And so with that, evolution, yeah, I mean, pricing and packaging absolutely is going to, in my opinion, shift more towards outcomes based. There's like two different types of like alternative pricing. There's like the usage based, which is like the input, like literally your API calling, like whatever the action is. And then there's the outcomes based, which is like how many times do you hit, the end result
Yeah.
of like a green checkbox job to be done. How do you experiment with pricing on that leading indicator versus the lagging indicator? Like that's going to be unique as well. I think people are going to have to make that decision for themselves.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think that's like evaluating, even when you're an enterprise organization based on features is gone, the pricing itself is changing completely. People are expecting an end result. And I think that takes me to the next topic, right? Like you, Consensus as a product, you work with a lot of go-to-market teams, right? Like a lot of go-to-market teams are utilizing your product, they're showing demos of their product, they're enabling those kind of things, but you have a front row seat, literally a front row seat on seeing how buyers behaving are changing. And I guess the biggest problem we see across the board is like buyers don't know if they should buy now or wait for 90 days to buy something because everything is shifting like crazy, right? So why would I take the risk of buying your product today when I know something else is going to come out within 3 months? How do you see this from your end, like your customers, how they feel the market from that aspect?
Well, I think that is the benefit of like the when we as a industry move to more subscription-based pricing, whether it's per seat, it doesn't matter. There's like just recurring pricing, which means you always get the best version of the product,
Yeah,
right? So it's not like gosh, like I feel so bad for the car companies, right? Like why would I buy this year's, BMW because the next year's is so sick. It's gonna be sicker. I'll just wait 6 more months till they release it, right? Like that's like you're really stuck with that. But the beauty of us in software in our industry is the customer always benefits from innovation. They always get the innovation. That's I think a gift to our consumers. Um, and then the second thing is like, look, like how painful is the problem? Can you afford to wait for the next iteration, um, to get in, right? How I guess how painful is the problem? And that's where we have to, love on our sales reps a little bit and our pre-sales reps and even our customer success reps that have to make our buyers feel the pain to motivate them to make a decision, or else a lot of people would just sit back and be like, I don't know, maybe tomorrow.
yeah, and I think how big is the problem is a key thing, right? Sense of urgency is becoming a key impact in software today, right? I think also the fact that we're going to kind of a headless UI concept helps a lot, right? Like, okay, like you can do something, you can ask requests. This month is going to give you half-baked answer. Within a month, it's going to give you better results. I want to make sure that we have enough time, and I want to unpack something that is like at the end of the day, the bottom line, when we talked about it quite a few, is the build versus buy, right? There is like we talked about it at the beginning of the conversation. You and I spend a lot of time talking about it, and there is a pattern we see over and over again. Like and it happens like through history, I would guess, or our short history. Cloud, mobile, AI, companies are trying to build everything themselves. Um, and for me, I talk with a lot of go-to-market leaders, and they're saying we got to final stages. We had signatures from procurement and everything. The CEO didn't want to sign. They said, "Okay, go ahead and try to build it in Cloud Code and Lovable, or whatever it is, and come back to us like if you can do this." But like they might not be successful but effectively it stops the deal, right? So why do you think this pattern keeps happening? And like, how do you think to stop it?
I mean, look, this is naughty Colin talking a little bit here. I'm gonna be a little spicy for fun. If a deal stalled on me because the CEO said that they wanted to build it themselves. I mean, obviously you're just like, okay, we wish you the best of luck. We really enjoyed meeting you. We hope you come back. We welcome you with open arms. We're excited to have you. The moment they come back, which they will. I mean, I'd say most of the time they will, depending on your product and how hard it is to build and the maintenance around it and all that stuff. Also, the engineering team, by the way, doesn't want to be building your operations. They don't. You don't
Yeah,
hire engineers and get them excited and pay them whatever they get paid to do that. So they don't want to do it anyway. They'll come back, and when they come back, kindly, respectfully, politely, oh gosh, so sorry it didn't work out for. We actually release the price is now higher, right? Like you're under leverage, bro. You showed your cards, it didn't work out. You're coming back to me, like
yeah,
I don't know. I'm just kind of being silly, but like, look, if the CEO, how can you effectuate change that moment? You probably can't, but you should, I guess trust that if you're a founder, you made the right decision of solving a very painful problem in a very good way, and you're solving it wholly and holistically. If you're, if you're an employee, you trust that your founders and the executives that come before you that built the company are solving a very painful problem in a very holistic way. And if you are, I believe there are very few smart CEOs out there that would want to spend the amount of time to not only build but maintain with their own internal resources. Um,
yeah. I think that that's a great point, by the way, because like what oftentimes sees it's like it's the impact of social media. People go on LinkedIn the same way they go on Instagram and they see their friends building things internally and they're reading, but like they don't read the fine print, right? It's like 10% is the building part, 90%
yeah,
is the maintenance. Are you building as a company, you're building an org for internal applications, right? Like this is something that does not make sense in terms of the logic, in terms of the numbers.
that's how I feel on, April 23rd, 2020, 6. Like that's my opinion. That's how I feel. Um, I welcome anyone to reach out to me in 6 months. So whatever, next fall, if you watch some college football, reach out to me and let me know if I'm wrong. I doubt it, but I'm always open to being wrong. I don't see a world where you can justify the spend, build, you can justify the spend to build something, then the maintaining of it. That's where the
That
ROI.
that's how you'll push back on those CEOs, like also as a product leader. That's what you'll
Yeah,
say is
yeah.
like,
I mean,
hey,
the ROI gets upside down with the maintenance
yeah,
and it's opportunity cost, right? It's not just that I'm spending $1 here and I'm only getting 90 cents back from it because the ROI is probably going to be negative or at least eh, minimally green. It's also opportunity cost that because I'm spending my dollar here, I'm not spending it here. So you're
yeah,
really spending $2. You're spending the dollar on the building and the dollar, and taking the dollar away from what you could be doing. So you
yeah,
better have a 2x ROI on your internal building or you are underwater.
yeah. That's a great point. I think 2x ROI, that's what you need to look for. And if you can't like prove it, don't do this.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit about the future from that perspective, right? Like I think zoom out, really zoom out, like 5 years from now. 5 years from now, nowadays seems like insane
Yeah, yeah.
what's gonna happen. But
If
like what does like a category defined AI product looks like in 5 years from your perspective?
what does a category defining AI product look like? Um, I think there's going to be two types of winners. I think there's going to be two types of winners, in my opinion. Riff with me on a second here. I think it's going to be you're going to have winner A, which is going to be the folks who are now solving problems that never could be solved because artificial intelligence and innovation have unlocked new capabilities that were not possible before. So these
Yeah,
are these are net new problems that are solved. And there's going to be some amazing winners that are like, "Oh my gosh, people have always struggled with this problem. but there's never been a real way to solve it in either an economically reasonable way or in a high quality way. So there'll be people winning that. I think there's going to be a lot of winners in category B as well, which are folks who go to the incumbents, go to customers, go to a market,
Mhm.
and say, "Tell me how you are using incumbents, legacy technologies, right?" And if those legacy, I think a lot of the legacy technologies are going to be stunted in comparison, and I think there's going to be a world where there's going to be a lot of winners that basically become the AI native version.
Because they're changing the flow, right? They're bringing them an outcome-based like flow
Changing
rather than
everything.
like your traditional SaaS product from that
Yeah, they
perspective.
become the AI native version of insert legacy technology.
Yeah,
And for a long time, that rip and replace has been very difficult because of the change management costs. But with headless UI, removing the user's conditioned habit to go to the web app, that lowers the barrier. And on top of that, I think with technology becoming so ubiquitous now,
yeah.
the ability for you to take data out of one platform and put it into another platform has become so. I mean, do you remember the old days when you have to have someone, if you want to do a CRM switch out, it would take like 4 fucking months. Like it would be like
It was
someone would be
ridiculous,
sitting in your office.
and you
That's
would
gone,
fail,
dude.
and you would fail, right? Like it
And
would
that
still.
Yeah, and so my point is because of all of those old world problems that are no longer problems, I think the barrier to rip and replacing technology has dropped.
You know what it does? It effectively puts product leaders as the most important function within the organization because all of a sudden they look at the entire flow, right? They understand exactly where the drops are. They understand what the users need, and they have also kind of the way to execute on the things right now. So it's kind of like I've never seen an engineer that build a good product. I've seen engineers that can code very well, but not building a good product, right?
Oh.
Like in generally speaking, I don't want to hate speech
They're
after.
unicorns though. I've met a few and damn, like
They're unicorns, right?
yeah,
And
I'd love
so
to have them.
effectively, PMs all of a sudden have this ability to understand all the building blocks that you've just talked about, understand the business opportunities, where the gaps are, and actually execute on them, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so it's a very exciting time. And then, Colin, thank you so much for taking time here. Like it's
Oh
been
man, my
great.
pleasure.
I
Yeah, I think I'll give a quick nod. I think something that's really interesting about what y'all are doing in Autonomy AI. And this is totally off script. I was thinking about it.
we
Uh,
didn't plan it. Okay,
yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
no. Well, we didn't plan any of this, but like this is particularly, I'm just thinking of it while interrupted you while you're saying goodbye.
No, no.
Um, I think what's interesting is like AI has given us superpowers, and I think in a lot of way, autonomy, from what I understand, what I've seen of it, is giving superpowers to product leaders, to folks who never had the superpowers, and that's pretty cool. It's pretty dangerous, like in a good way. That people could potentially sales reps, potentially even customer success reps, people who are like really there in the moment the problem occurs could potentially say like, oh gosh, I got to get this out of my head and mock something up that's like really high quality that really solves the problem completely versus the old way where we had to like telephone it 3 times to get that pain experience back to the people that have the superpowers to do something about it. That's a lot of telephoning, and we know like when telephoning happens, like people lose context. So I think what y'all are doing is exciting, and I think it puts
Thank you.
power in people's hands that otherwise never have been able to do anything.
I mean, it is very exciting, and I think we're seeing this today with over 150 companies already utilizing the product, right? This line between
Right.
idea and execution, it's gone. The ability to like have something, understand the business logic, understand the impact on the client, and execute on this very quickly within the guardrails of the organization is no longer existing. It's collapsing. And I think from our perspective, like we're seeing this shift happening day and day and day with a lot of those companies. The biggest takeaway I have from our conversation, right, is like, first of all, I think PMs are like like in the spotlights right now from that perspective. I think the concept of SaaS is not dying, but it's evolving. It's evolving because buyers are evolving, the market is evolving. It's also evolving because technology is evolving, and you should capitalize on those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
So it's basically being redefined, and it's more result based oriented than anything else, right? And it's definitely a deep implication on everything, not just founders who's just starting the companies, but also teams that are building products nowadays and are operating on a current SaaS product from that perspective, right? So I think I would leave everyone with that. Colin, again, thank you so much for the time. It was a lot of fun, and we're gonna do quite a few of those webinars, so keep following us, and I appreciate everyone. Thank you.